Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Luke Renda, and I'm here with Alfred Obersteiner. He is a man I met through a mutual friend of ours, Matt Presti, and we did a tech talk. I believe it was number 27 on his Rumble channel and Substack if you want to go check it out. It was a very fascinating conversation of about 3 hours, and we talked about generational trauma, healing, personal physiology and how that can bring about the healing of trauma. And today we're continuing that talk, hopefully lead into some solution oriented stuff that Alfred has been practicing for a while. And so I'd like to bring Alfred on and perhaps he could do a short introduction of himself. How you doing, Alfred?
Yeah, hey Luke, I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well too.
I'm
So
hanging
about
in
this,
there.
are we all right?
Yeah.
One way or another. Yeah, a little bit about me. He was born in Switzerland and about 15 minutes away from where Carl Jung lived. But it was unbeknownst to me. I found it out much later, but it's sort of coincidence, right? But then I grew up in Austria, and I'm very close to the border between Yugoslavia, Italy, and Austria, which later on became something else. I got really interested in life. I then grew up in Vienna for 16 years, which was very interesting too, because a lot of stuff we talk about, you know, had its origin there. And, you growing up in an historic context. And then I moved back to Switzerland again because architecture wasn't my thing anymore, sitting in the office for 8 hours a day. And I thought, well, I might as well become a professional ballet dancer at age 24, which was an adventure. And then from that, I moved on to New York City, to put my own thing together, to study, to work. And then I stayed, right? Got married, the whole 9 yards. But we talk about trauma and so on and so forth, there was always something within my life that I had experienced, grew up in, and never knew what to do, not even knowing that this thing even existed, that something got stored in your body, right? I had no idea. But it later on became very obvious that that's what was happening. And then the question was, what do you do with it? How can you get out of it? How can you heal? How can you, what can you do? Right. So, and then, looked back into my own history, the history of my grandparents, the history of my mother, you know, First World War, Second World War, Cold War. And then you sit there and you're thinking, wait a minute, what's going on here, right? Has this an effect on me? Is this, do generations just keep doing the same thing? And why are they keeping doing the same thing? What's the mechanism of it? What's the biology? Right? Not just psychology. What's the biology of it? So, and then, the journey started, right? Then, big thing was um, growing up in AIDS, the HIV scam, all of that, what that did to whole societies, and because the profession I was in at that time, I had a lot of my colleagues dying. Just, in a month, 2 months, all of a sudden they were gone.
Was that from the AIDS or from like
Well, it
treatment?
was the treatment.
Yeah.
They all went on the treatment. As soon as they went on the treatment, they went downhill. So, and then, because of all these colleagues dying, and then I got a massage therapy license, and I was, with these people, I had them laying there, and then you dealt with their psychobiology. You touched them, right? And then all of a sudden, well, that client isn't showing up anymore because the client is dead, right? And you're thinking, wait a minute, you know. So then I went, I got this opportunity to listen to a virologist, and his name was Stefan Lanka. And it was one of those small rooms in New York City, packed. He was there with a whiteboard and a Sharpie, and he started up. And I was just sitting there and I was floored, you know. First of all, you're dealing with some 160 IQ, you know, in speed talking and speed writing, and he just throws the stuff on the whiteboard, and we were just all sitting there. I'm like, what is he talking about? But there was an extensive answer and question period. And then you sit down like, holy shit. Everything that you know is little BS. I walked home and said to my wife, I have to do a lot of a lot of redoing because that man is onto something. And then subsequent, because of his help, I was able to actually save people's lives. It was literally from one week to the other. I had one client he was in excruciating pain for years. I would work on him and I said, I think your digestive system is completely destroyed. You can't absorb any food because you're on all these medications. So he looks at me and he says, oh, wait a minute. What shall I do? I said, why don't you go for some colonics? So he goes, he sees me again, and he said, I got off of the table when it was all done. And he said, in years, the first time I was without pain. Right? Got himself off all the medications. Then lost contact with him. And one day I was in a health food store, and I get this tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and there's this guy standing there. And I couldn't recognize him because his weight came back, right? He looked like completely different. He said to me, do you remember me? And so I looked at his face and thought, oh, yeah, I do. He said, I want to thank you. I'm off all my medications. My doctors can't believe it. I'm healthy. I have no problems. And they said it was never the virus. It was the drugs and my lifestyle, and what I went through as a child. Right. Another one, he was involved in a car accident, had a blood transfusion. Right. So he had a trauma from the car accident, which was a bad car accident. He didn't feel good. He got a test, and the test showed up positive. And he was literally sitting on his chair, waiting to die, with his ex-wife standing there, having last conversations. Had a child, had a girlfriend. I came in and I said, I think that maybe just throw it all out. What do you have to lose? So we went through it, all that scam of HIV/AIDS and all that stuff. And I took the bottles, and he was taking ACT. And ACT was attacking your bone marrow. Right? So when I turned the bottle around, I said, take a look. It had the poison sign on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I said, you're poisoning yourself. And he said to me, it's very interesting what you're saying, because I was starting to take the medication. I went really downhill. So I took myself off it and I felt better. And then my doctor scared the living daylights out of me. So I went back on. And now he said, I'm all the way downhill again. I don't know what to do. I said, just take yourself off. I mean, you have nothing to lose. I mean, you have 1 week to live, maybe two. But he said to me, I think about it. So a month later, I see him. He's walking, his girlfriend, daughter, comes up to me and said, you know what I did? I said, I have no idea. I said, I went cold turkey. I took every single pill. I put it, he had a whole container of stuff. I said, I threw it in the toilet. I said, I had nothing left to lose. Let's see what happens. Survived. Right, and I had a couple more like that. And then came COVID, right? So I went back to the same guy, Stefan Lanka, and I listened to him. But then he was already going on, said, well, this whole thing with DNA, it's not quite what we think it is. There's much more to it. And then he mentioned this thing called German New Medicine. You probably have heard about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, what's that? I said, what is it, right? So, and then I listened to it, and it said trauma, conflicts, biological conflicts, creates disease states, survival stress, right? I said, there's something to this, right? So, but by then I was already very much, I already knew about a lot of stuff, But don't know if you might be interested how I discovered trauma physiology myself.
Yeah. Let's talk about that
Okay.
for sure. Did you start figuring out when you were doing ballet and things like that, doing the physical practices,
Yeah,
or
what
took
yeah, what happened was I was doing ballet and I started very late. And my body was stuck. So and everything what I was told to do didn't work because you can't just teach an adult body of what you're teaching children. Right? So you have to come from this a little bit differently. So I started studying lots of anatomy, physiology, training methodologies, and at that time there wasn't much there. So we just threw a lot of stuff against the wall and see what stuck. But then when I left Switzerland, I came to the States and I was hearing a lot of things. And then one day I was, watching TV and this guy, John Bradshaw, came on. And I don't know if you remember him. He had this special on public television, and it was childhood trauma and how it affects adult lives. And it was hugely successful. So I bought the book, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm basically reading the book from beginning to end because I'm basically reading about myself. I was like, wait a minute. Right. So at that, okay, now I went into studying yoga. I got into Buddhism, I read about different states of consciousness, of how to achieve that. Jung came into the picture. He drifted in. So and before that, my mother had a horrible childhood. So I got all that into me. Right? None of her relationships worked because of it, because you don't know that yet, right? So you're just thinking, what's going on? And then my half sister died in a car accident. The mother was suicidal. You have to get through school, engineering school. With a dropout rate of about 60%. But that's the ticket for you to get out of the life that you're in. right? So you stick in, you can't sleep, you're doing all-nighters. You try to have a life on the side. And this buddy of mine gives me this book, and it was from Eric Fromm. It's called The Art of Love. And I thought, well, I'm a young guy, The Art of Love, right? So I opened the book up and I'm like, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with what I think it has to do. So I read it and I was like, how does this guy write about me? How is this possible? Well, he didn't write about me, he wrote about the human condition, right? So I thought, oh, wait a minute. But what's interesting, you grew up in Vienna, right? And my school was located on the street named after Schelling. How much did we hear about Schelling?
Yeah.
Zero,
Zero for sure.
right? And then getting out of school, I would turn around and there was a street named after Hegel. How much did we learn about Hegel? Right? Then we had a place called after Freud. And we were discouraged reading Freud. Right? So love him, hate him, it doesn't matter, right? But we were discouraged of reading him. We studied history, and guess where history stopped being taught? Beginning of Second World War. And we were sitting there and said, wait a minute, now it gets interesting. No, nothing. I would talk to relatives, they would not talk about it. My grandparents were born in the First World War. They were still around when the Austrian-Hungarian Empire existed. Nothing. I was trying to have them talk about it, and they would suppress it. They would not touch it.
In our last talk, I was wondering about this if, because my grandparents were also living in Europe during World War One, World War Two, and I'm wondering if, people, that generational trauma is stronger with people who were in Europe at the time versus obviously people in the United States who still went to war, but it's not affecting everyone's whole
Yeah,
family. Your
yeah,
streets aren't being blown up. There
yeah,
aren't the massive food shortages and everything like that. And I was
exactly,
thinking about
exactly.
that during our last talk because I had such a physiological response to what we were
Yeah,
discussing.
yeah, yeah. I had this experience with this. I don't know if I mentioned that with Matt. There was this old Italian woman. She was living in the same complex that we were living in, and my mother and her became friends. So I was this young guy, and one day we just visited her because she was always alone, you know. And so I'm there, and something triggered her. I don't know what it was, but First World War was mentioned. And there's this old, close to 80-year-old woman, and she was knitting, and all of a sudden she just breaks down. She's in a puddle, and she says, "I'm so sorry. I just have these flashbacks as a child when I was helping soldiers coming back from the front and what she experienced." So I'm sitting there, I'm like, "Wait, you're 80 years old and you're still reacting this way?" Right? I mean, I didn't know. And then once she invited us to come and visit her, so we went to this area in Italy, basically on the border to Austria, and the Austro-Hungarian and Italian front were some of the bloodiest fronts in the First World War. So I would walk up these mountain ranges, and there were these bunkers, with artillery in it, and thinking, what made them bring the raw materials and the cannons up there? what kind of mindset does this? How did you get this stuff up there? I can barely walk there. I have to climb there. How did you get this stuff here? What did you do in the winter? How did you survive? Huh? So, and the same with the Second World War. I was, talking to my uncle. And I said, yeah, no, he was supposed to be drafted and going to the front. Guess what he did? He was hiding out in the woods. He was a sharpshooter. So when they came by, I said, well, he's not here. And that was towards the end of the war. When they sent children to the Eastern Front, getting blown up. Sounds familiar now?
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine. All right. So and you try to talk to people, and there was nothing. We had little Nazis living in our building complex, and we always knew them. And then when there was some strife going on, with refugees, they would just simply come by and say, when Hitler was around, this would never have worked. It's like, whoa, you know. So you're thinking, well, I'm growing up in all this. What's going on, right? So then I had to take it into my own hands to learn, to study. Find someone to talk. And there was almost nobody. It was all suppressed. Right. So what the level of alcoholism? The level of child abuse? Right. Completely disembodied society. And then you take Jung and Freud and Adler and all these people, and they were in it. They looked at all this and said, what's going on here? Right. Yeah, there was child abuse in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was epidemic. Yeah.
We'll even look at the way, um, people were born in the late 1800s, 1900s. There's taken away from their mothers and put away, up until even the 70s,
Yeah.
80s, you
Yeah.
know. They
Yeah.
don't see their mom for 2 weeks. That was like general practice
Yeah.
rather than, the minute after you're born, you should be going to your mother and
Right? You are the mother at that moment. Your survival is dependent on her. That's your connection to life. And it was just one thing after the other. I was even wondering, how did I even turn up so halfway functioning of what went on, right? But there was one thing: I was out in nature.
mm,
All right, I had friends. I played a lot. And all that kept building a regulated nervous system that I could function. And some of my friends weren't that lucky. I found later on that one of them, ended up in prison because he murdered someone. He was my friend, but I knew there was something going on at home. you know. So I had another friend of mine, his father was an absolute tyrant. The mother was gone. So then I know how he ended up, right? So he was extremely talented, but the nervous system just couldn't handle it anymore. He basically became a recluse. And so anyways, so anyways, so you carry that stuff all with you, and then you start the professional ballet training, and then that was abusive, to many extents. It's not a very healthy environment, but you don't know that yet. It's high stress. extremely physical, and a lot of body shaming, right?
Mm.
Even with girls and guys that if you would see them just regular, I'm like, well, why would you shame a body like that? you know? And now you're adding that you're really passionate about something, and now you're adding all the shaming and the trauma and all this survival stress of just being in this environment and training very hard. So now that stuff just really starts to get into your body. And I didn't know how it gets stored. I just knew it was getting stored because I had problems sleeping. I would wake up in night sweats, and I'm like, what's going on with me? Right? This is not normal. And then you find out you're not the only one. And I would ask around and said, are you going through this? Oh yeah. Especially the girls, because their physiology is different, right? So then, you start asking questions, right? And you study more anatomy, more physiology. And then when I got to the States, I really started to, you know, and I still kept reading Eric Fromm. I read um, Escape from Freedom. What a title, right? A Revolution of Hope, Anatomy of Human Destructiveness. So, so you start to read this and say, wait, what's going on here, right? So, and then, you got, I was even going reading Terence McKenna and all that stuff, not knowing of what was going on there. I got into yoga, and then stuff started to happen in my body that I couldn't explain. Got a massage therapy license, read about Ida Wolf, Job's Body, all those classics, and then fascia started to enter the conversation. And then I started teaching myself, and I thought, I can't teach what I was taught. That it doesn't work. So I really opened myself up, for my students to say, well, I gotta go a different way. And then one day I was looking through some training methodologies, and this bodybuilder, not the massage school, none of that, a bodybuilder, mentioned this book called Anatomy Trains. I'm like, what's that? So I go online, I look at it, and it's this whole book about fascial lines and fascia physiology and emotions and all that stuff. Well, I gotta get that book.
Yeah.
Well, needless to say, it's basically a medical text. So it's not easy to get through. But by that time, I was already familiar with medical language. So I read the book, and I'm thinking, this is the only book that I should have read in massage therapy school. All the rest was nonsense. This is the book. Why don't I know this? So, and I thought, okay, I gotta work differently. I gotta concentrate on fascia. And then right in your neck of the woods in Canada, there was this guy called Andreo Spina. I don't know if you've heard about him.
No, I think his name sounds familiar, but
Yeah, he came up with this thing called functional range conditioning.
hmm.
And he researched mobility. What is it? Um, University of Toronto or something. He was into martial arts and he wanted to become more flexible, and all the stuff that he was told didn't work. But he had access to the library. So he said when all the people went out to party and drink and do all that stuff, he was hitting the books. And he had access to all the research articles, right, that we don't have access to. So him and his friend, they were going through this. And he came out and says, everything that we know of flexibility training and mobility training is wrong. So he came up with this course, this methodology, and I thought, I'm going to spend a couple of $1,000 and I'm going to do this. So now I'm sitting in this room, and the room is filled with bodybuilders, CrossFit, physical therapists, one dancer, me. Right? I'm thinking, mobility is our thing. Why am I the only one? So we went through this whole thing, and I'm like, wow, this is interesting stuff. So I went home, I started right away. And then sometime I was sitting there and I started shaking out of nowhere. And I thought, what's this? Why am I shaking uncontrollably? I wasn't really concerned. I knew that this stuff can happen. But this is weird, right? So I went to the computer and I typed, shaking. So, and then one sentence said, well, it's part of trauma release. I'm like, what? So trauma release and this whole thing, right? Peter Levine, the body keeps the score. This whole new world opened up. And especially this one Canadian woman, Irene Lyon. She had this course, Smart Body, Smart Mind, which we subsequently, ended up doing the course of her. German New Medicine, that entered the conversation. And all of a sudden, when the transformer, it just built itself, and then you have that thing standing there. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm onto something. Right? And then around the COVID area, that whole scam, I had time to read. And I thought, you know what? I think it's time to hit some Jung. So I got some Jung books and some Neumann books, and Michael's from Unslaved suggested Trauma of Birth. And now I was into it. And now you're opening the world, right? Now the First World War made sense. The Second World War made sense. How whole societies and civilizations work, how we are controlled, how big business, trauma physiology is a huge business. It's the biggest business in the world. Nothing comes close. Right? Drugs, legal and illegal.
Cancer.
Cancer, right?
Huge.
Heart disease, right? So the whole medical field is a trauma factory.
Yeah, even the birth, like
right.
you say, right from birth, it's trauma.
Yeah, right. Circumcision, right? How insane.
Yeah.
Vaccines, just injecting children with what is it now, up to 80?
Oh yeah. By the time they're two.
Right. So it's just now social media, right? So I was thinking, we survived in a way because we had nature, we had each other, so we related to each other. We tried to figure things out. Our social media was a coffee shop, a ball dance school, and then you read the polyvagal safety, right? the name escapes me right now. Stephen Borges, the
Mm,
polyvagal theory. And he said that play is is the key, right? Because you are in a playful mood, but you're active. So now you're not in a survival state, right? So you see people screaming around, like if, for example, martial arts, you put a bunch of boys in there, they beat each other senseless, but they're laughing, right? So now you're exercising, you're getting better, you're training your nervous system, but you're not doing it in the state of survival. You're doing it in a state of play,
hmm
right? So now when I was in the ballet business, when you put a bunch of boys in there, we had just fun. And we were bouncing off the walls, bumping into each other, trying new things, landing on the floor, but laughing and screaming at the same time because it was so funny. And we would do this for hours on end. And we would leave and we wouldn't be tired. But then the director comes in, has an hour rehearsal with all the shaming stuff going on. You walk out and there's somebody took a 2x4 and beat you up for an hour. Right? Now look at mixed martial arts, what's happening. Right? Millions of dollars are being spent of people basically beating themselves half to death. And now we even so far that we're celebrating women doing it.
Yeah, weight cutting, all that stuff that's hard on your
Yeah.
body,
Yeah.
stress.
Look at bodybuilding. It's grotesque.
hmm
Look at football. You willingly go into car crashes every single weekend for 16 weeks at end. So when do these people die? How many of them have brain injuries? How long is their career? You see it everywhere. Trauma became culture. It's everywhere. You can't escape it. So it's boxing, right? Why are we watching this? I can understand training at it, right? You protect it and stuff, but we're paying millions and millions of seeing people beat each other half to death. Look what happened to Mike Tyson. You know, Mike Tyson said he felt safe in prison.
Yeah.
He finally started to feel normal. He said he didn't want to be in a ring. He was just in there, and then that's the only thing he was good at. He said, "Well, I didn't really want to do it." And then they asked him about his childhood, and he says, "I don't really remember anything." One of the psychologists actually that worked with him said that he had probably one of the worst things that you can imagine. But instead of becoming a murderer and a serial killer out in the normal world, he became one of the greatest boxers in history. You know, but he didn't want to do it. It's like, no, it didn't feel good. But it's the only thing I knew to do. Right? So it's everywhere. Right?
Yeah, it's learning to see violence differently, you know.
Yeah,
You see it
yeah,
everywhere.
everywhere.
People going to dinner with their families. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, yeah. And it's coming out everywhere. So now, again, back to social media. Right? So we still had contact with each other, and because of how people interact person to person, the nervous system starts to regulate itself. That's gone now. And the nervous system can't regulate itself through a screen.
hmm
Right?
Or from
And we have seen,
just from some, apartment buildings or, no one's out in the park. It's too dangerous. half the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Here, luckily I live in the woods, but it's yeah, everywhere is full of violence, anger, isolation,
Is
alienation.
isolation, alienation. Yep, all done by design, right? So the other thing I found out because I was doing all this research, I go into research of, let's say, children need more sleep because it's still developing, the nervous system isn't ready yet. They just need very few friends, right? Just one or two. That's all the nervous system can handle. The parents, the family, that's it, right? Being out in nature, don't compete, play. If you're competing through playing, and boys will do it automatically. It's ingrained in them. Right? But then you see the implementation in school. What gets cut? Play. What gets enforced? Testing and competition. The classrooms are getting bigger and bigger. So boys are sitting around. They need to move. They're kinetic. That's who they are, right? Girls like to be in circles and talk to each other. That's what they do automatically. Yeah. Boys are not. They want to climb. They want to run. They want to do things. They want to wrestle. It's like watching little puppies play, right?
Hmm.
So now you're sitting them down in a chair and you're droning this stuff in them, and then you're talking that they're all toxic.
Well, just look at the ADHD diagnosis versus girls versus boys. It's like 1,000 to 1
Yeah,
something because yeah,
because
because women are better in those situations than young boys, right?
yeah,
Young girls, yeah, they like to be indoors. They like to do that more domestic type of stuff.
yeah, because it's safer, right? It's the community. They do this naturally, right? Boys, they need to go out. They need to climb trees, and they do it with like two or three friends. That's it. Not in these large groups.
Hmm.
Boys don't go out in large groups. They go out one, two friends. That's it. Maximum four. One table. You know.
Yeah, I see it in the little kids. We go to martial arts with this one kid who's been in school his whole life. I've been homeschooling my kids. They
Hmm.
they're going to school now. This is their first year in a couple years, but it's like they're institutionalized. The bigger groups you go in, I can see this kid. Whereas my son, he has one friend and his brother. You know what I mean? And they are independent. They walk. We're walking around down in the city. We go to Campbell River, which is like the city across from this island where the martial arts is. The one kid is so used to walking in a line with other people, with an adult in front, an adult behind. He doesn't pay attention. He's not aware of his surroundings. It's actually super weird to watch. Like he'll walk right
Yeah,
into a telephone pole because he's looking at his feet. He's walking forward, whereas my kids are talking. They're looking around.
yeah, yeah,
They're aware of their surroundings. They're moving out of people's way
yeah.
because they're just used to being
Exactly.
in a group of two or three people running around, paying attention, right? Like a lot of
Yeah,
that. Because, when
because
you're out of your body, if you can't pay attention to what's going on, you're not aware of where you are really in
yeah,
relation to other things.
yeah, yeah,
So it's crazy to watch.
yeah. Right. So it's also when because I was teaching in the ballet stuff, so these kids would come in, they couldn't move. They were incapable of moving. Right leg, right leg, left leg. You know, no, the other arm, same arm and leg, and the eyes
Hmm.
would glaze over because they're so removed from the bodies, they just can't move. You know. So if you don't know that as a teacher, now you get frustrated. You know, my mentor said, just give the steps, give the information, and let the bodies figure it out. It's like, oh, okay. So that's what I did. I wasn't even saying what I was wrong. I said, okay, yeah, it's close. You're doing
Yeah.
better. Oh, now you used actually the correct leg, right? And the kid would smile. Oh, a success, right? I would constantly, break jokes, and all of a sudden, like a few months later, they were starting to do the right stuff. And guess what then happened? You get fired,
Mm-hmm.
because then it travels out to the rest of the parents, and they said, I want my daughter, my child taking that class. You're out, you know. So it's here's one for birth trauma, right? A dear friend of mine, she was a very good dancer, and she was on her way to get to the best companies and stuff. She was it, right? And then she got pregnant. And recently I met her, I talked to her and I said, so, how's it going? So she told me that when her child was born, she said something wasn't quite right. So the child could not go outside into the sun. The doctors had no idea what to do. She could not function outside,
Hmm.
couldn't go to school. All right. I was like, wow, there's actually a name for that, which I forgot. And I said, so how did it work out? And she said, I just, we just let it happen. But I also know that she's a very good person, a very supportive person. The same with her husband. And I think she told me when she got pregnant, she was in a highly, highly stressful situation. And she didn't know she was pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
right? She had no idea. But during the time she was in a company trying to start getting her dance career going again, she was supposed to be an understudy. But the person that she understudied got injured, so she was thrown into it and she was pregnant without knowing. And during that time, she said she was extremely stressful. And I said, there you have it. Okay? But because she was very supportive and the child's nervous system started to regulate, the child started to feel safe biologically. And then all of a sudden, now she graduated, she became a fashion designer, she was able to just live a normal life. Right? Here's another one. One of the biggest problems with female dancers, they have spontaneous miscarriages. And we had one dancer, she was of American Ballet Theater, got pregnant, and she already started to show the bump. And I'm like, why are you here? Well, I want to stay in shape as much as I can so I don't lose my spot after my child is born. Right? I'm like, oh. So I went to my mentor and I said to him, you think this is a good idea? And he said, no, she's probably going to have a miscarriage. I said, really? He said, yeah, happens all the time. I tell them all to get to leave class, not to be here. Maybe take a ballet bar and then go home. None of them listen. And then literally a few weeks later, she was gone. It's like, oh, maybe, she realized she can't do it anymore. No, miscarriage. Go to the bathroom. That's it, right?
Yeah,
So
so
she learned.
so career oriented, right? So driven
Yeah, yeah,
rather
right.
than
Yeah. But she
focusing.
wanted to be a mother. She said, I want to be a mother. And then she got pregnant again,
Oh,
became a mother, started the career up again. It was working, but didn't
yeah.
listen, right? It's that feminism.
Yeah, the career drive rather than, the future of your generations, right?
Yeah.
The future of your family line, which is the most important thing.
Biggest power in humanity to change the world is women's ability to raise the next healthy generation. And it has to be happening between year one of pregnancy in utero and age 7, especially the first 3 years. That's where it's all set up. It's not women who go to politics and CEOs. No, it makes it worse. That's where women's power really lays. Women could change. Women could change the world in 2 generations if they wanted to.
Yeah.
You end.
Oh, I lost you there, Alfred.
Trauma healing.
Sorry.
Within trauma healing, there's this thing called orientation, right? So your nervous system is becoming aware of the surroundings. That's the first thing. If you don't know where you are, that child doesn't feel safe being outside. He only feels safe because there are adults around him, and he has to sort of like walk a straight line, be in a room. You can't put him into a wood, right? You put your boys into woods, and what happens? You can't get them home.
They're up in a tree. Where are you guys? Oh,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
up in a
come
tree. That's right.
come in for dinner. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that
You
was
know,
part of homeschooling. My older son, for those years, he went to kindergarten a little bit just because his teacher was a good teacher. It was more like a play oriented. But then he was
yeah,
homeschooled for the last couple of years because, now that he's 8, he's ready to go out into the world, go see what happens, right? Same with my 5-year-old. He's ready. He's gonna stay home and homeschool for the next couple of years too. And then when he's 8, he can go in there. But they get to go and do all these other things in the world in the meantime, right? We're going
yeah,
here, we're going there. They're coming shopping with us. They're going over on the ferry. We go to the martial arts, walking to the
precisely,
class, and
precisely. Yeah,
rather than just, they're not some kids aren't ready to be put in those situations, right? It's like you got to build up that confidence. You got to build up that physiology as well,
yep,
and then
yep.
they're ready. It's amazing to see they're ready to go. They can do it. They're not worried. There's no apprehension. There's no nervousness.
No, no,
They are like, they're going out joyfully to through the day,
yeah,
There's no reluctance, there's no sadness. It's really neat to see.
yeah. I walked to school at age 6 by myself. And it was almost a half an hour walk, and I would walk through cornfields because it was a shortcut. I mean, you can't imagine that today.
No.
Yeah, go to school.
Yeah, my
I'm
5-year
sick.
old, he's ready. He's like, I want to get on the bus. I'm ready to go. I'm like, oh yeah, I know they don't let the kids your age go to the bus yet, but maybe in a couple weeks. He's like, oh, okay, I went when I'm ready.
Yeah,
Uh, he-
exactly, right?
but he's a bigger boy too, so he's a little
Yeah,
more confident. And yeah, I used to walk to school too. My mom was like, hey, there's the other kids walking to school. Just follow them. My
yeah,
second day of school, I just follow the kids and in the snow going down to school, and we'd walk
yeah,
another way home, find our own way home that was back through a
exactly,
field, and
exactly, right?
you drop
Exactly.
your friend off in the neighborhood, and yeah, it
Yeah,
was cool.
yeah. Yeah, my mom, I mean, with all that stuff, she still said, gotta be home when the sun's down. That was the rule.
Hmm.
First rule was, is your homework done? Then you can go. So I was really fast in my homework. So then I would visit my friends, make them do their homework so we could go, you know. And then it was off, right? It was just, climb trees, Tarzan was the big thing. So, we made some ropes and swinging from tree to trees. It's amazing we survived,
Yeah.
right? But we had that sense of survival. We sort of, yeah, we were putting ourselves into some dangerous situations, but we're not stupid,
Hmm.
right? Now that's a little too dangerous. We'll back off here, right? Right? Is the rope strong enough? If not, double it up. Things like that, right? You know, we made our own rockets. We had one in the basement that actually flew, but hadn't any guidance, so the whole building started to fill with smoke.
Yeah.
But everybody knew it was us, but nobody went to the police. And it's like, oh yeah, just some young boys, and the smoke is gonna go, and it's fine. Of course, I came home, and mom already knew what I did, because the phone rang. They know it was me. So it's like, what happened?
Experimenting.
Experimenting, right? So, but again, with the healing of how we can work with it, right? The first thing you have to re-embody yourself, because trauma disembodies. That's it. It's very simple, right? And then here's another interesting thing of like what you see out in the world, right? So woke, right? Woke is regression. That's it, right? And regression happens. What happens to you as a child at a certain time? If that conflict doesn't get resolved, then you start reliving that conflict till it starts to resolve, right? So now what we're seeing out there is fascinating to watch, right? Because you see them with the pink hair and the tattoos and the nose rings, and some stuff is even worse, right? With all the transgender stuff, right? But all that stuff is back to regression, right? Want me to read a quote from Otto Rank?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so he says, this was from the book Trauma of Birth. And I found this, and it's very apropos, right? So, in the last resort, then, the neurosis problem reduces itself to one of form. For we see in the child's biological adjustment to the extrauterine situation, in the normal adjustment of civilized man, as well in his compensatory superproductions of art in the widest sense, the same striving to overcome the birth trauma enacted in similar forms, the only essential difference being that the civilized human being is still more the artist, can reproduce this objectively in manifold, strictly determined forms, fixed by the primal trauma, whilst the neurotic is compelled again and again to produce it in similar way only on his own body. Right? So the neurotic will produce it on their own body. So what do you see in woke? Right? All the tattoos, the nose rings, the piercings, the injections, all right?
Trauma, 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 right?
Like the women, trying to look more beautiful with lip injections,
Yeah, that's crazy, eh?
right? With the silicone boobs, the butt lifts, the operations, the facelifts.
Well, and just every surgery too is adding more trauma. Every tattoo, right? It's the pain, you know?
The neurotic will produce it similar only on his own body.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about that in Mankind Possessed, that presentation I did with Matt. It's just so clear, right?
Yeah,
The
right?
regression too, right? Like when you
Yeah,
become more of an adult, you're progressing, you're maturing, right? Rather than being halted and then going back.
Yeah.
You know,
So
it's
this philosopher called John Gebser, I don't know if you've heard of him.
so
Um, he it's a phenomenal book. And he looked into the stages of human development, consciousness developing, right? And he divided it into a few parts. And he said, well, the first one is the archaic, which is just pure nature. Right? So that's the first mental structure that you have. But that's in the subconscious, in the unconscious, right? Like there's a mental structure that made you and me, right? Instincts, that's part of it. Yeah. So you boys go out, right? They're just looking around, they're with nature. That's all archaic. They know how to do it, right? So your mothers know how to take care of the children. Where did they come from? It's instinctual, right? That's the archaic mental structure. Then they said it comes to magical, right? So, that's all like, we say, is, you know, looking at bones and looking up and seeing all this patterns, all this magic, you see it in some mythologies. So it's the magical structure. Well, the magical structure is also the child, right? Especially young girls, the fairies and all stuff. Well, also what happens is that women are very prone to this. They have to be connected to this magical structure because eventually they might raise children. So they're in this magical world. Yeah. Then you grow up, you go a little further, and then all of a sudden it's mythology. So now it's like knights and spaceships and gods and your boys are probably coming into that age now, right?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, we've
Right.
been reading The Lord of the Rings. They're just loving.
Exactly right. So the Lord of the Rings is part magic, but also part mythology. It's that whole thing, right? It also is when it goes wrong, what happens, right? So now it's this mythological structure, that mental structure, right? And humanity went through this, and you can see it, in so-called matriarchies, right? It was the magical time, and then you could go to the Greeks and so on, and then it's mythology, but then it's all, and then if the next thing is the mental structure, right? It's sort of the cognitive, the rational. And we have been in this for a long time already, right? That's when philosophy came along, psychology came along, but it's still very mental. Right? And then he says the last one is the integrative, where you put it all together. Right? And that usually happens around age 36, 40. So you see this in the child's development. When a child is born, there's no memory, but the child is breathing, the child has instincts. Yeah. It can eat, it can defecate, it can scream, cry, right? And then you go on, and it's the magical time, the fairies and all that stuff. And then your boys, they're getting into the mythological. And then when they go into school and the rational, that's when they start to learn. They can sit down and actually read a book and learn mathematics, and they're okay with it. And then you go through life, and then later on, once you probably in the state now, I'm definitely in it with the integrative, where you say, well, what is this whole thing all about? All right, so Jung called that's when you turn inward, halfway life, you've been in the world out there, now you turn back inward. Then you become the teacher. So now what's now really upsetting is what happens when you get traumatized in the archaic stage. what happens when you get traumatized in the magical, in the mythical, in the rational, right? So let's say you get traumatized in the archaic. You have no idea what's going on. Prime example, Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Severe trauma in utero. His mother was on antipsychotic medications when she was pregnant with him. And then when he was born, he had zero attachment, no help from the mother. Look what happened, right?
Well, and that attachment is so important.
Yeah,
That's what allows them to go out, right?
yeah,
Otherwise, they
yeah,
keep wanting to return,
yeah.
you know,
So
to
they
the womb, to the
regressed, right?
mother. Yeah,
Yeah, like the return to the womb, right?
yeah, exactly.
Right. So the city is a kind of a womb, right?
Yeah, urbanization. Yeah, for sure.
That's right, right?
It's the most fucking dangerous place is in cities. You know, out here in the country or whatever, we don't have mass stabbings, shootings.
Yeah,
Everyone kind of knows everyone. If there's a criminal, we know who they are. You know, there's not just thousands of them roaming the night.
yeah,
You know, it's crazy.
yeah. So
Yeah,
now
it's
then you see, let's say some guy gets traumatized as a little child, in the magical phase. All of a sudden he runs around like a baby in diapers, in a tutu, and you have to call him her. Right? How many people are, reliving a traumatized experience in the mythical stage? Well, that's where religion comes in, right? I mean, you look at religion. I mean, is that something that is a non-traumatizing event?
yeah, blind belief.
Yeah,
It's the same with the scientism, right? The science
exactly.
world and the
That's the
medical world,
rational one, right? That's the
right?
escape into technology. But it's the technocrat, I don't want to be in my body. I'm gonna plant myself into some technology. As Eric Fromm said, the danger is not, you know, machines becoming like us. It's the opposite, us becoming machines. So here I wrote something that I'm going to post it later on somewhere on my um, X account. That as a response to trauma, humanity will create representations of both traumatized and traumatizing deities while glorifying suffering as a pathway to salvation. Right? So Jesus gets nailed on the cross. Mel Gibson makes a torture porn movie and makes billions, and that's the salvation. He
Yeah, the
shows us a path of salvation.
victim psychology and yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah. Look at Hinduism. The holy man is an ascetic. Look at them.
Yeah, and you got to go wash his feet for him. You know what I mean? Talk about creating a slave mentality.
Right? And yet that culture is full of yoga and all that stuff. And yet the holy man, look at him. Right? You go to Judaism, the rabbi bites off a boy's foreskin in the name of God.
Yeah, it's so crazy, eh?
And then if that is not enough, no, we'll do it in the hospital. In the name of science and medicine and
Hygiene.
prevention and hygiene. Right?
As if you couldn't have a bath. You know, it's so crazy. And people still
Yeah,
do it to this
yeah,
day.
yeah. And now you go, who has the one of the biggest parades of queer and gay people? Where is it located?
I don't know.
in Tel Aviv.
Oh, a constant war, constant fighting, aggression, right? Where do you think this aggression's coming from? Your eight-day old boy,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I even went to Israeli newspaper, the Haaretz, and I looked at human trafficking, especially sex trafficking, and rapes, rape incidences in Israel. It is astronomical. Yeah, but why? It's right there. Circumcision. And you would say, well, it's why is it? It's the rabbi doing it, right? It's the men doing it to each other, right? Yeah, but from a baby's archaic psychological time, what who is the primary caregiver? The one that gives life and makes the child survive. Who is that? It's the mother, not the father. The father isn't even around in the child's psyche. He really doesn't exist, you know? The mother exists. You were just in there for 9 months,
Hmm.
building yourself, right? The foundation of the psyche is built within the womb, you know?
Well, even my daughter, she's just over a year. And if she's sad, like during the daytime, it's fine. But it's like at night, she needs her mother, not me. If she doesn't want anything to do with me at night,
No,
or if she's
no,
sad,
yeah,
because, I'm just starting to come online with her, oh, hey, yeah. It's like, but I'm also just like one of the other guys in the house, the other, she doesn't see me as like that primary caregiver yet.
no,
That comes maybe you know, 3 years old. They start getting it, right? When they start speaking and they've been
yeah,
around, it's wild.
yeah, yeah. So here's something interesting with in utero neurological development. If the mother is in survival stress, the the child develops a stress physiology in the brain. So by the time the child is born, it might already be under
PTSD,
PTSD. Yeah,
cesarean sections, circumcision, friggin' allergy tests, vaccinations. It's crazy, man, what they go through.
yeah. So by the time you're 2 3 years old, you're starting to talk. You already have to deal with this monster that you're already carrying with you. You don't even know it yet, right? So and then early kindergarten and all that stuff. You're being removed from the mother, and then the mother gets even more stressed because the mother instinctually wants to stay with the child if she has healthy instincts. So she starts to stress out during the day, so she goes home. And immediately the child's nervous system will tune according to the mother's nervous system. And this happens automatically. So the
Yeah.
mother starts to tune, and mother gets more and more nervous because the kid is getting more and more nervous. And all of a sudden you have a neurotic kid.
Well,
And how
me,
many girls start to cut themselves? Right? What do the boys do? They become violent, first towards themselves, right? And then towards others.
and even look at the rates of, autism or even developmental disorders, that's putting
Yeah,
more and more stress on the mother rather than
yeah,
it being,
yeah,
like my wife is like, oh,
yeah,
it's such a joy to be a mother. And she talks to other mothers like, oh, we're having so much trouble with this and that. And oh, I thought, it's just like, well, you already started off on that wrong foot with your kid by all that stuff you put them through. Now it's like making, your parenting life is like a hell,
exactly.
rather than a joy
Yeah, right. Because the attachment isn't working.
because they're disassociating and
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that boys are even more sensitive in early childhood than girls are, right? They die in a higher rate. And we then later on, we call that toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And then we put them into school and we're telling them they're all trash and they're future rapists, right?
Hmm.
And all that stuff.
You shouldn't breastfeed them because you're just teaching them to be a rapist. So they're even trying to pull that attachment away. Just even where you
Exactly.
get your own food, your
Yeah.
nutrients.
Yeah. So now that little boy, the first relationship that he has with a woman is the mother. He came from her. So the future relationships that he has with women is set up by the mother, not by the father.
Yeah, they don't even notice that till they're a little older.
Yeah.
The
That's
parental
just this
relationship.
guy that's running around. And if things go haywire, then he helps. And he throws me in the air and and slowly, it's like, oh, he's kind of a cool guy,
Yeah.
hopefully, right? And here's another problem, which, you know, a man has a much closer connection to a woman than a woman has to a man. Because a boy has an experience of a woman. He came from her, was born from her. He was fed by her. He was taken care of by her. So he will put that woman on a pedestal because he has to, right? His survival depends on that. So if anything goes wrong with the mother, what does the little boy do? Is he going to blame the mother or is he going to blame himself? He has to survive. So and that relationship later on becomes the relationship that he builds first with himself. That's number one. And then the relationship to the world and any other relationship that he builds, work, other women, so on and so forth. His children, the future. That's all set up during that time. And it's grained in the nervous system. The nervous system it's called procedural memory. It just does its thing. Right? So when that stuff goes wrong there, and believe you me, I know because it went wrong. And I dragged myself out of it, kicking and screaming.
Well, that's what happens with that physiology too. It's going to start awakening memories. Like you're not going to remember, but it's in your body, right? But
Yeah.
as you start getting that fascia exercise and pumping, get all the flow back into your
Yep.
biology, it starts
Yep.
all of a sudden memories start coming up that you don't know where they're from. You've never even had them before, right? It's like new memories,
Yeah.
visions, images of
Exactly.
things,
Exactly. Right. So
which
I literally had them when I was doing my fascia work. All of a sudden I had these dreams. I'm like, what the? I remembered a time when I was laying in the crib by myself because my mom and the dad had to go somewhere. They left me at home by myself, just sleeping. Right. Okay, fine. They had to, there was an emergency. They had to go somewhere. And then they missed the train.
mm,
And I was laying there by myself in the crib the whole night. And I remember screaming for hours because I was thinking I was going to die.
mhm.
And when I told my mom that I remembered this, I said, when I was like really little, I was in the crib, did something happen because I remember being in there screaming my head off and I remember staring at the ceiling. And she looks at me and she's like, how do you know what? And I said, just let me know. Did something happen? And then she told me the story.
Mhm.
I wasn't even one yet,
It's
you know,
amazing
and
she knew what you were talking about too.
she knew, right? She knew because she was petrified. My dad wasn't, because my dad was beaten half to death by his father. And he saw his father died when he was very young. He used to get so drunk they had to take a wheelbarrow to bring him up the road, a dirt road, to bring him to the house. Right? But why was he such a drunk? His dad was so drunk he walked, fell off the road, fell off a cliff, and died. Now you're at the war and all that stuff, and all of a sudden you see that my father was traumatized. He relived his childhood over and over and over again, became an alcoholic,
Hmm.
extremely violent with alcohol. Without alcohol, great guy. With alcohol, whew, you know. Then comes the divorce and all that stuff, right? So that's in your body, right? That's in there, you know. And then you gotta unwind it.
That's the
Yeah, and then
same.
you hmm?
I said, oh, that's the same with my grandparents as well. Just alcoholics and violent and,
Yeah, that's
traumatized from war and
that
abuse.
traumatized.
And
Yep. And repression. You don't want to talk about it. You know. And Christianity itself, religion itself, is an extraordinarily repressive force.
yeah,
You know, I mean, wow. And I felt that growing up in the countryside. That religion, that thing, God is gonna be mad at you. You know, the whole
or,
area
or just forgive
completely.
you for all your wrongs. Then you don't have to do anything about it.
Go to the priest, right? Just talk to him, and you forgive him. You know. So I went. My uncle, when I was about 14, he said to me, "Come with me." So okay. So he takes me in the car and he drives up to the church, and we get out and we stand there, and he says, "You see his house over there?" I'm like, yeah. Guess who lives in it? I have no idea. It's a nice house, right? I said, yeah. So the priest lives in there. Yeah, okay. I said, so how do you think he lives in there? What does he do? So I don't know. Oh, he talks in the church every weekend. That's it. That's all he does. He lives in the nicest house in the neighborhood, the center of the village. I'm like, oh, and you see that car over there? I said, yeah. It's a nice car. I said, yeah, that's his car. And then said, so, said, oh, anything that's happening in there? I said, forget it.
Nice, he
You
knew.
know. Yeah. So then he was a game warden, we call him hunters, but he was like a wildlife warden. That's what he did, and he studied it. And one day he bought this little shingle and he put it on top of the kitchen door. And there was a discussion, and I said, so why don't you come to church? And he takes that person outside and says, read this. And it said, a good look in the sky is better than a false prayer. And I said, that's my church. I don't need to go because you're all hypocrites. And then one day he took me out on one of his hunts. It was in the winter. So he built this tree house. And in the tree house, he had a little stove. Right? He put some wood in and some coal in it. That's what he did. I'm like, wow, that's nice. He built a treehouse. He said, yeah. And I asked him, I said, why are you always, why are you always leaving? Sometimes you're gone the whole night. No, I'm 14. And he says, said, this is my church. I said, what do you mean? He said, look out. And there were a whole bunch of foxes running around, the whole fox family in the snow. And the moon was out, full moon, right? No clouds. And it was cold, and you had this little fire running. I said, this is where I sit. This is where I think. This is my church. Nature is my church. He said, there's no building, nothing can replace me watching foxes play in the middle of the night in the snow. And I said to him, yeah, I get you. I'll get you. Yeah, you're right. Right? So, but what did he do? Right? All the trauma that he went through, he was able to regulate himself being in nature
Hmm.
and being with his grandkids and his grandkids. And I found out later that my mother, she was so stressed out at age 2, she dropped me off with my uncle. And I lived with them for 2 years.
Hmm.
And I think those 2 years from 2 to 4 saved me. Something happened there that sort of, I was able to build a better foundation in my nervous system.
Yeah, rebalance.
Yeah, and I
There's
didn't know
obviously
anything. Yeah, I didn't know about it. Right?
that's crazy.
Yeah. So there's another quote I want to read, with Gabo Mate, because you're reading his book. You read his book, right? The Myth of Normal,
No, I haven't.
his latest one.
I haven't read that.
Yeah,
He comes here sometimes, actually, to this island and to the next island over once in a while. Him and Rupert Sheldrake,
yeah.
and yeah, he's a
Oh,
cool guy.
yeah. So in that book, he wrote something. He said, response flexibility is a function of the midfrontal portion of the cerebral cortex. No infant is born with such a capacity. Baby's behavior is governed by instincts and reflex, not conscious selection. The freedom to choose develops as the brain develops. The more severe and earlier the trauma, the less opportunity to respond flexibility has to become encoded in the appropriate brain circuits, and the faster it becomes disabled. One becomes stuck in predictable automatic defensive reactions, especially to stressful stimuli. Emotionally and cognitively, our range of movement becomes well nigh sclerotic. And the greater the trauma, the more stringent the constraints. The past hijacks and co-opts the present again and again. Take this in a family, between you, your wife, or children, or grandparents, or whatever. Expand it into a tribe, into a clan, into a nation, into a civilization. Ukraine is that, right? Go back to the Holodomor. Do you think the Ukrainians have forgotten the Holodomor? No. Mass starvation from the Soviets, Bolsheviks? No. Right?
Don't look at the amount of human trafficking and prostitution coming
Yep.
out of there, right?
Yep. And you know where most of these girls go? To the Middle East.
Mm, yeah. Another most traumatized people.
Right? They end up in Israel, and from Israel they go, Saudi Arabia and Dubai and whatever the places are. Right? So what's the treatment of women in what's the treatment of women in those places?
Yeah, they have less rights than dogs.
Precisely. Right? So it sets it all up. I don't know what's the future child growing up in this. You
Yeah,
know?
the religion, the yeah, it's crazy over there. What is like, yeah, when are people gonna get it? They gotta drop this stuff. Like you say that even the Christianity, it's like you gotta drop it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of this trauma factory.
yeah, yeah, you go to read Ralph Ellis's work, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look at Michael, the series Michael just did about Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh yeah, no, I haven't caught that. That's so good.
Yeah, I'm on my second go around.
Yeah, it's such a bunch of forgery, you know.
Yeah, and then look at some of these people, like stone commies in the desert making up a religion,
Yeah.
disembodied, you know. So you look at the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a reaction to that. You know? But by then the instincts become corrupted and then they come back in a demonic form, to quote Jung, right? So and then you had the French Revolution. Well, how good was that? We're still in it. We're still going through it.
Yeah, it's the same
You
same
know?
people, same families, same ideology,
Yeah,
right? Which is like you're saying that how the philosophy gets your life experience get transferred into that philosophy, and then that philosophy starts spreading to more of the like-minded people, like what you were saying about Schopenhauer earlier. I think that was before we were recording. It's
yeah,
like the like-minded people, the people that had that same upbringing, they love that philosophy.
yeah. Why can't we? You want me to repeat Schopenhauer a little? What I said before?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So
We,
Schopenhauer, he had this like extremely negative, pessimistic outlook on life. And I thought, okay, so why is that? It came from somewhere. Yeah, it came from his mother. He had no attachment to his mother. She always thought that he was a complete failure. For her, Goethe was the thing. And because he couldn't be like Goethe, so it was a failure. So this child grew up with no attachment. I think the father died early. So he had no connection. So now because of what happened, he disembodied. So his thing was almost a Puritan sense of discipline. That's how he coped with it. He took ice baths in the mornings. And then he sat down, I'm gonna write from here to here, and then I'm gonna write from here to here. He couldn't form relationships with women, you know. And he saw many women because many women grow up with that non-attachment to their mothers too. Right? That goes both ways. So these women then become, with their husbands dying in war, their sons dying in war, they're the only ones left over. Now you have the war bride phenomenon. When women need to survive, well, they go with the soldier. You have hybristophilia, women being attracted to criminals. You know, George Manson got love letters.
yeah. Dahmer
So
had
did,
girlfriends in prison.
yeah, so did Ted Bundy.
Yeah, Ted Bundy, exactly. Maybe that's who I was thinking about was Bundy. I think he had
Yeah,
a couple of kids with these women.
yeah. The guy that shot the CEO from this corporation,
Oh yeah, Lu
good-looking guy,
Luigi.
Luigi. The courtroom is filled with women. He gets
Uh,
love letters, right? So now you see women being attracted to this. You see it now, you know. Then you add hypergamy, the instinct of always wanting to level up, for resources and, you know, the best looking guy and all that stuff. And now you have that soup that's just brewing in the whole society. So Schopenhauer was part of this. He saw it all and he wrote it down. And it says, the only way through is just, with discipline and just, basically expect the worst and then you're not going to be disappointed. You
like
know,
the power drive.
yeah.
Get what you can get.
So now he was basically frozen. When I think it was it a cholera outbreak or something that happened? Yeah, I think it was cholera or something. He went to the town to see of how people reacted. Right, and he wrote about it. And he's like, well, when people are dying and da 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 da, and that they're living in this extreme, survival stress, he said that's life. Right? This is no, that's life in a survival stress situation. That's not life when you're living differently. But yet his whole philosophy was based on that. Right? So now his philosophy becomes extremely popular. Why? How many people grew up like him?
You look at people living in ghettos and all types of places, right? That like is their philosophy.
That's the philosophy. They have never experienced anything else. The mother is afraid to leave the child out because there's another gang shooting going on. And then you have the mayor of Chicago saying, "No, we don't really have crime is down." Down from what? Did you go from 1,000 murders in a year to 980?
Yeah. That's like the game of statistics too. They like to hide, they don't want to solve any crimes. They don't want to even record them because that'll mess up the percentage of arrests and convictions and murders. And
Yeah,
it's just like a number game for these
yeah. And
people.
Lenin said that crime is basically a necessity, the glory of the French Revolution. That's what he did in Russia. He said, "Well, I gotta get all the criminals out and stuff and let them do their thing." And then somebody asks, "So why are you doing this?" He said, "Well, who else will do the work? They have nothing to lose." Now, once we're done, once we're in power, we'll just get rid of them. Also called the night of the long knives, right? In Germany.
So it's happening now, letting
It's
all the
happening
criminals
now.
out.
Yep.
Don't convict them, let them out, cause
Yeah.
the chaos,
That's right.
arson, whatever.
Yeah. That's what we had in 2020 or whatever, right? The summer of love.
Yeah.
Right? So it's everywhere, right?
S-
Nietzsche, same thing.
Nietzsche, yeah.
Yep. Grew up,
Hitler.
father died early. Yeah. Yeah. Mother at least saw him as, the amazing thing, but she was a very devouring type.
Yeah, he was feminized from an
Yep.
early age.
Yep. His sister stealing his work, changing it.
Hmm.
Right. And his way of coping, being very frail and feeble as a child, always sick, always
Sickly, yeah.
having headaches, because his father died on a brain tumor, screaming. That guy was living under survival stress his entire life. So the only way for him to cope was to be very intelligent and to have that will to power. Now you let that loose on millions of young men around that time. What you gonna get, right?
Yeah, and look at the aftermath, right?
Look at the aftermath.
All the wars.
Yeah, and he's getting very popular again.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, but I mean, he was very intelligent. He had very important things to say, right?
Hmm.
But once you go to the childhood and say, okay, how did it start? How did it end up? So it's a philosophy coming from childhood trauma. Schopenhauer is a philosophy coming from childhood trauma. Hitler said, my mother is the only person that understands me.
Yeah, God.
So what did he
So,
grow up in?
yeah, just that's insane that he said that actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, oh my God. It's horrific.
Yeah. Now he wasn't the First World War, right? So he was not a frail little guy. The will to power, man. He did it. And a whole nation followed him. Then you look in the childhood of Zelensky, grew up in a gang warfare land, in a dying Soviet empire. That was his childhood. He's this little scrawny guy who can't defend himself, do nothing. What did he do? He became a comedian. He
Mm-hmm.
got through it of being funny. And then somebody says, you're going to be the president.
Yeah.
And we're going to give you the opportunity to beat Russia. And his whole childhood, yeah, I'll do it because I grew up with the end product of Bolshevism. Keir Starmer, mother very diseased, couldn't couldn't take care of him, and father was devoted to the mother and didn't care about him. And now England is suffering his childhood, right? And these people are being put there because of it. He didn't get that because of his talent.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Look at Trudeau. Look at Trudeau's mother. That video of him when he basically says that my brother was an idiot of dying because he died, and
Mm-hmm.
his mother was leaning into him and smiling.
Oh yeah, she's sick, eh?
Yeah, yeah, and it's Trudeau Senior is not his was not the dad.
No, I don't
No,
think so either.
no, the guy down the island, Cuba.
Yeah,
It's a spitting image,
yeah.
and
No,
she was
he's
down there.
holding up his it's like I've never held one of my friend's kids up like this. You know, if someone's like, "Hey, here's my," you're like, "Oh, a nice kid." You're not like holding him up for like you do, like, "This is my baby." Yeah. Oh, that's crazy, man. Yeah, Trudeau,
Yeah,
if you've seen him in any of these meetings or any of these international meetings when he's going around, he's like the kid on the first day of school. He doesn't know where to sit. He can't look at anyone.
nope.
It's like the least confident person you've ever seen.
Legs crossed over with the nice socks on.
Yeah, he's like
He's a girl.
yeah, what's that the Manchurian Candidate? He's like the son, he's like that and that's the mother. When I saw that, it's like, oof, man. The
Yeah,
mother that's like completely sacrificing her child,
the
for
devouring mother.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now look in Europe. Look at Van der Leyen and all these women. They're more bloodthirsty than any man can ever be. They're in power.
Yeah.
Right? There's this formula, right? The higher you go up in power, the more it's going to inflate your psyche. The more the psyche gets inflated, the more corrupt the instincts become. And that's what you see everywhere.
When you can, that unconscious is coming out too, right? Because they're comfortable in their position of power. So then they start showing their true natures. And yeah, it's
Yeah,
horrific.
yeah. And Adler's psychology is all about that. Inferior superior complex.
Yeah, totally.
And you see them. That's why all these weird people were put in the previous administration. The transgender became the health secretary,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, obese people are.
Or in Belgium, the health secretary is like a 400-pound thing,
Yeah.
right?
Well, in Canada, we had one, and she was like about 83 pounds
Is
or
she the
something.
Asian woman?
She was Asian, her eyes were sunken.
Yeah, she was a picture of health.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. But it's done on purpose, right? Because you're looking at this as a normal person and you're saying, why am I, why do I have to listen to this? And your mind starts, your subconscious starts to try to make sense out of this. And you're trying to make sense out of the senseless. And that's what leftism is.
Well, and that's why it's just like, when you talk to religious people and you question them about religion, they go, they can't talk about that because it's like they start to question the things they know are lies. And it's the same thing with the health stuff. It's the same thing nowadays. It's like the cognitive dissonance. They want to fuel that. Even with the news, they'll play two opposing stories so you don't even know what's true. And that's what they want, right? Because if you don't know what's true, just like in 1984, you could believe that 2 plus 2 equals 3
Yeah.
because you don't know anymore and you can't think for yourself. You're not confident with yourself.
Yeah.
They can make you believe whatever if they make it seem like, we don't even know what is true anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's just easy to brainwash people that way. I don't know
Yeah.
what's true, so maybe let the experts tell me what's true so I don't have to think about it.
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to find this other quote from he was a psychiatrist in Poland, um, Andrew Lowachevsky, and he wrote something very,
Yeah,
very
do
profound.
do the quote and then
Yeah,
maybe if
I,
you want to give a
I,
few
I
hints
can't
for
find, I can't find it
can't
right
find
now.
it. So what would you say for like healing the physiology? What is like would be your number one thing? Do you have like a practice that you do
Yeah,
regularly?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I started out with first with something called orientation. So you start to become aware of your surroundings. So sometimes you just sit there and say, okay, that's the window, that's the television, that's the screen, there is Luke. I hear the traffic. I'm sitting in a chair. What does the chair feel like? What do my feet do? All right. So I started with that. Now I was already very much moving. I was into this stuff already, right? So that's very easy. But for some people that are traumatized, they can't do it. They can do
Yeah.
it for maybe 5 seconds, right? So Irene Lyons said she had some people coming in and they were so done that they were just laying on the floor. And she said that was it. That was the session,
Yeah.
right?
Good.
That was it, right? Like what Peter Levine says, right? So don't go back to the trauma. Don't try to relive it, right? It's already in you. You don't have to relive it. It doesn't release itself because of that, right? So I said here, what I
That's
basically wrote said that you can't relax yourself out of something that took decades building as a tension into your system. So you go into a yoga class and say, well, now I'm going to meditate and I'm going to relax. That doesn't work because the body is not familiar with it. So a lot of people start to meditate and they do it for like, a minute and they're like, oh, I couldn't do it. No, you can't do it because the body isn't familiar with it. Right? So the body has adapted to your life situations. The body knows what it's doing. You have to teach the body something different. And it has to be biological, right? You got to go back to the archaic, what we talked about before. So you're going back into the body. So how do I breathe? Are my shoulders up? Or are they down? Do I carry any tension? Can I relax a little? Right? Or sometimes don't do anything, just be aware of what's going on. Oh, I'm sitting like this.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Why? Oh, well, maybe just release, right? The other thing I do is one of my favorites. Let's say I listen to a good piece of music that relaxes me. So now my cognitive function is so different, right? And then I lay on the couch, I feel the couch, and then I feel my heartbeat, right? And then my heartbeat, I say, can I feel my heartbeat in my hands, in my feet? Right? So there's this conductor that's sending out electric energy. And I say, okay, what does this feel like? And if you're quiet enough, you can feel it in your teeth. Your teeth don't have circulation per se, but they have electric charge. And you feel that electric charge. Right? So, but sometimes for people that have never done this is already a lot. And sometimes you have to work with this for weeks,
Mm-hmm.
months. Sometimes you have to stop. Right? I was doing some work on my viscera because that's where the dorsal branch of the vagal nerve, it goes down to your viscera. All the organs are functioning from there. Then it goes up into the brainstem. So, and the vagal system is that 80% of the information is going to the brain, only 20 is going down, approximately. So people are trying to change the 80 with the 20.
Mm-hmm.
And the 80 says, I'm in charge. I know things that you don't know. Right? And that stuff is stored in the fascial system. And the water running through the fascial system. Because they're like tubes and the water runs through it, and that's charged. That's charged water. So now, for example, are you into martial arts?
Me, yeah.
Yeah. So for example, you're in a martial arts and you get hit hard. That's a traumatic impact on the body. So the fascia will remember it. The water will remember it. So now let's say you don't have a methodology, a movement methodology, a take care of your fascia of like saying, okay, how can I relax this? Is there something I can make this dissipate? For example, that hit, if you make the body very tight, that hit gets stored in the system. But if you relax the body, then the force getting hit goes out the other end. But if you don't know that, and let's say you've been traumatized and your body is like this was my body was like that. I saw a picture of myself when I was a kid, and I'm like, holy shit, that was me,
This is how I am. My high school photos. It's
right?
crazy, eh?
Yeah, right. That was me. I'm standing there like some some pinballs, like whoa, you know. So if you don't have now, that gets stored in your body, and that accumulation of tension stored in the fascia starts to distort the cells themselves. And those distorted cells have now distorted water inside, and the charge drops. And when the charge drops in the water, the cells start to multiply to create more charge. And that
Mm-hmm.
multiplication we call cancer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or that constant stress that's constantly feeding into the heart, we call that heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Exactly.
we call it adrenal fatigue, right? That's where German New Medicine comes in because he laid down a map, which was phenomenal, right? So then the next thing is have a slow movement practice. No, the next thing is go out in nature. Just go outside, walk around, hug a tree. Yeah, something happens when you hug trees. The electric charge in your body changes.
That's
Barefoot on
why
the ground.
boys climbing trees all the time and doing that. It's super good.
Yeah, have a good relationship with a pet, a dog, a cat. I prefer dogs. It changes your nervous system, right? You go from an active fight flight freeze response to a rest and digest. Like an animal will help you with that. But if you have never been in rest and digest becomes dangerous. Yeah. So if people want to start relationships, the relationship starts what your nervous system is familiar with. Yeah, so that the abused wife syndrome. She goes from one abusive relationship to the next one. Well, she survived it. She's familiar with it, right? The guy that the abuser starts because he has a bond with the one that he wants to abuse. He's projecting his stuff into that person. Now the abuse goes same way, right? With the men, it's violence. With the women, it's different. It's the constant nagging and the constant,
Well,
you
even
know,
the stress and the drama, you
yeah,
know, people will go into another because they're used to that high vibration, right, of that
mm-hmm,
relationship.
yeah. So, for example, extreme sports is that because these people don't feel anything anymore. So they're going for more and more extreme stuff. Yeah. The highest suicide rate is free climbing, mountain climbers, free climbers.
Mm-hmm.
They have such a high, right? But then when they can't do it anymore, they're like, "What? Why live?" So they go for one more climb.
Right. That's what Jung actually, he had a friend who died that way. He told him stop climbing. He's like, I had a dream, and he's like, or he told him his friends told him his dream, and he's like, yeah, you got to stop climbing. And then the next time he climbed, he died
Exactly, right?
because his
So,
subconscious was telling him, right? Like, hey,
yep,
you got to
yep,
cool it.
yep. So it's like orientation, all that stuff, nature, pets, right? The most important thing, is do it very slow. I had an experience where I did some fascia work on my viscera, and all of a sudden I got really nauseous, and it lasted for quite a while. And then one, it was so bad that I was throwing up for hours on end. And I was like, what is this, right? And then I had this flash. When I was 16, we took a vacation in Romania, right? Ceausescu, Romania, communism,
Mm-hmm.
big mistake at that time.
That would have been what? What year was that? 70s,
That was
80s?
70, 78. So it was the height, right, of his. So the whole hotel got food poisoning
Mm-hmm.
because of what they fed us. The only ones that didn't get it were the alcoholics. Because the amount of drinking that I saw in Romania, I've never seen anywhere in the world. That was wild. That's the only way people coped with it, right? They were drinking vodka by,
Yeah.
not shots, glasses. So it got so bad that we thought we might be dying here. The stuff that was coming out, I was like, what is this? It was bile. My body remembered this. And then a few months ago, because I was releasing all my fascia stuff in my body, that memory came out. That memory
Mm-hmm.
came out being as sick as when I was then. And there was this flash coming in. I said, oh, that's what it is. So it's like, no medication, no nothing. This was just let this happen. And since that moment, I had a couple more short things, but nothing. And then it was done. Right. So when you start doing that work, what happens is that some things might get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the body will, if you go too fast, the body will release something that you're not ready for. And then you snap back. Right?
It's like even dealing with grief. If you lose someone close to you, it's gonna take, you're not gonna just get over it in a
Yeah.
few months. It's gonna take years.
And that grief gets stored in the tissues. Right? So then the next thing I would say is a slow movement practice. That's why Tai Chi and Qigong is so good. But it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be that, right?
yeah.
Or it can be something similar. Just make up your own stuff, right? Feldenkrais, that was his whole thing. A slow movement practice because the fascia has properties. One is viscosity, it can change the fluid state, right? One is plasticity, it can hold a shape, and one is elasticity. Yeah? If you do sports, it's elasticity you want to train. If you want to do trauma physiology, now you go into viscosity and plasticity. You have to change the tension patterns. But the tension patterns can only be changed if you stay very slow
Mm.
and under tension, not relaxation. Light tension and light movements. So when you see Qigong moving around, that's what they do. They didn't know about fascia. They called it some web, spider's web thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or moving the chi. Well, the chi is the water, the charge, the electric charge moving through the body. That's the chi. They call it chi. For us, it's there. You're moving water around, fluid, and you're charging it. Right? Sunlight. Get out in the sun. Increase the water intake. Little bit, just during the whole day. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Little
a
salt.
tiny salt. But when you start feeling the salt too much in your mouth, you say, okay, I went a little bit too far.
Mm-hmm.
Go a little down. Right? And no, it's not the potassium sodium pump. No, it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
That's another thing,
exactly.
right? So then you start changing the charge, right? So for example, in cancer, when the charge in the cell, when you can raise it again, the cell starts to divide, stops to divide. And if the charge is enough, then the body says, okay, we don't need the others anymore. And then they're going to be taken out. Right? So Gerald Pollack called it easy water, right? It's an easy states for exclusion zone. His fascinating interviews, when you listen to his stuff. So slow movement practice. Not going to the gym, not pumping weights. No, you're going into sympathetic, right? If you lift the weights heavy enough, now you're going into survival mode. Yeah. You're going to failure. Now, if you want to become an athlete and you want to train and you want to build more capacity, now you have to do failure training, right? But you do it once and then you wait for 72 hours because the body is still processing. Right?
And you
So,
can do like rejuvenative stuff afterwards as well, right?
yes, right,
Which is really lacking with a lot of that stuff.
very much,
Even
very much so.
even like how people warm down. When people are warming down, like, a lot of people just go working out, stop, boom, boom, they're back in the car driving. So you have to have
Exactly.
that warm down where you're actually like your whole body relaxes.
Yeah, because you're going from a sympathetic, excited state. You don't want to stay in that, right? You worked it. You increase in capacity, but now 50% of your improvement comes from rest. Can you calm down again, right? Can you get into rest and digest? Because if
Yeah.
you can't,
So it can be traumatizing just like doing martial arts. You can be like so tense afterwards because you're not letting yourself relax. You're in that combat phase.
yeah, right. So you look at the Chinese martial arts, you look at the Shaolin. I mean, it's crazy stuff they do. But then what do they have? What do they do afterwards? All of a sudden there's the meditation. All of a sudden there's the Qigong. All of a sudden there's this Tai Chi, right? Nobody in China should be alive of the old population.
Hmm.
The air pollution, the quality of the food. I mean, they're living, some of these people live in caves still. And they're 80 years old, 90 years old, in a park, moving.
Hmm. Well, that movement, there's that flow of your all your stuff in your body, right?
Yep, right?
Not
So,
rigidity.
yeah, and now the young generation has stopped doing it. Cancer rates are up, heart disease is up, the toxic medications are up, arthritis is up. All the Western diseases are now in China.
Hmm.
Why? They stopped moving.
Yeah.
Chinese culture has the oldest movement culture in the world. There's nothing like it. We don't have it in the West. You know, that's why yoga became so popular. Unfortunately, Gnosticism came with it.
Yeah, and like the escapism and all that, right? The
Exactly.
guru
The
worship.
guru, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And Jung warned about it. Don't do it. It's not ours. We have to do our own, right? So that those are sort of like the basic and then really important things. Slow, stay very slow. And
Hmm.
then, the Jungian work comes in. Become aware. I'm reacting that way. Instead of lashing out, why don't I just sit down, let the biology settle, and the anger disappears. It doesn't repress. It's just, oh, okay. Right? So this as Bessel van der Kolk said, that the body keeps the score. He wrote that book. all of it, everything. Right? That's it's so important to remember that. So I wrote something else. I said we all have birth dates, and they measure in hours, days, years, and decades. Instincts, however, perceive time in millennia. Right? They, they operate in a completely different time frame. There's no real time, it's just millennia. And instincts run your show. Right? But we think, time is hours, minutes. No, no. Right? And in your body also there is this will to live, this will to live a good life. The body wants to do this for you. Right? And when you start taking the survival stress away, then the body says, okay, I give it to you. Release the tension in the biology, in the fascia, create a different water, create a different charge, create different memories. Right? You don't have to go back to trauma and stuff. The body will release it. The body wants to get rid of it. It
Yeah,
doesn't want to hold on to it.
it's like that return to the womb is almost like a death drive, right?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
before that there was nothing. You weren't alive, It's a weird thing. Just
Yeah.
thinking about that now.
Yeah. And the womb is the water, right? It's everywhere. The lady in the lake. The water is the subconscious, the unconscious, right? What's the most what do we have most on earth? What is it? It's water and salt. What are we made of? So apparently a baby when it's born is basically 90% water. And then when we die, you look people, they're dried up.
Mm-hmm.
Now it goes down to 60
Right.
something percent. Now in the middle, we say, well, you're 70% water. Well, according to whom?
I guess it's the salts that hold the memory that's in the water too, right?
Yeah, it's basically, it's not really water, it's a gel. And then you go to Masamoto, what was Masamoto's work and Veda Austin's work with the pictures of
Mm-hmm.
frozen water. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. You know, that's also grieving, for example, because that memory is stored in the body, in the water, in the fluids. And what you went through with your friends, when that person is gone, that memory is still in it, and it has to be processed, right? That's grieving, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Well, it's taken me a couple years, really.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
summer, it's funny because this summer was like a 3-year anniversary of all that, and I'm actually able to grieve properly now and
yeah,
let it go, whereas before you're just moving on
yeah. You
with
just, you
things.
just, you're coping,
Yeah.
right? But let's say you would have had a movement practice, you would have done all that stuff, and a little more knowledge of how this functions. How long would have been the grieving then, right? Would have been taken the same time? Would have been shorter? The experience would have been different. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's the same with even like when with acquiring knowledge, you got to let it settle too first before it really sinks in. You got to let that stuff, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That's why you basically. I think one of my biggest mistakes in life was to say, if I provide knowledge to people, they would want this to resolve of what they're dealing with. Big mistake. No, knowledge is dangerous because it literally attacks your biology. You go to someone and says, the Jesus stuff, it's not quite it. Oh my God. Go to a Muslim and says not at Allah stuff. Wow. Right?
We even look at after COVID and all the people, they're just getting hit with so much at once, all this new information, and then they're like almost having breakdowns or they're
Mass
going off
hysteria.
on some other, you know, creating their own new ideologies or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Because, well,
too much too soon, right?
yeah, religion is archetypal. We want to know where we came from. We want to know how this whole thing came about. We want to know where we're going. We want to know what happens after we die. It's part of us. Yeah. And that stuff was hijacked and packaged in a priest class. Here. Religions are psychobiological political movements. They affect your biology, your psychology, and they're being driven into politics. That's what the religions are. And once we got rid of Christianity in the West to a certain extent, right? It certainly doesn't have the power anymore that it used to have. What did we create? Psychiatry. Now the priests have white coats.
Hmm.
Scientists.
I'm even reading this book, Progress and Poverty. Yeah, Henry George, and he's talking about how like even the Malthusian idea has like influenced economists rather than, it's like, oh, there's just not enough for everyone, and this is, all this stuff, and he's like, no, it's like you're literally creating an economic theory based on somebody's philosophy. It's not in reality, because in
A,
reality
philosophy,
anything is possible.
a philosophy that's based on ancient cataclysm.
Yeah.
Right? Now you're going to the work of Velikovsky.
Yeah, Mankind in Amnesia is a pretty good one.
Yep. We have forgotten that we have forgotten. That's where we're at. Why do we spend billions of dollars to make these planets crashing into each other? The floods, the tsunamis, 2012, the day after tomorrow with the. Why do we make these movies? And why are they so popular? It's a memory.
Yeah, what do you
Imagine in Egypt when Santorini blew up. I know Ralph Ellis goes through this, right? When the volcano blew up. And then the plagues came, and the ash came, and all that stuff came, and the starvation came. All of a sudden, God became a volcano.
we just gotta repeat it with our own bombs and our own plagues and our own death and destruction. Like it's like again, it's like that re-traumatizing,
Yeah,
rather than letting it go and dealing with it, you want to relive
yeah,
that trauma.
yeah. Here's one for you. First world, the Spanish flu we were being told it was a virus. No, it wasn't. It was the First World War. It was mustard gas. It was soldiers being shipped over from here, over there, being with the horses and the feces, breathing that stuff in the whole day. It was starvation. The whole continent was filled with mustard gas. It was on the clothing. Trench warfare. You had dead bodies strewn around. I mean, there were 100,000 bodies being just around somewhere in a field, decaying. Mustard gas, artillery, all that stuff. And we say it was a virus. And then when the First World War was done, guess what happened with the Spanish flu? Gone. But here's the kicker. This is how crazy we are as humans. They found out that mustard gas has effects on the bone marrow. And they found that there was a tumor reduction with mustard gas in mice. So mustard gas derivatives became chemotherapy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Then later on, the atomic age, with all the nuclear stuff, and we found all that out, radiation became cancer treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then we got into biowarfare with other chemicals, and now we have drugs, chemicals for cancer treatment, ACT, right? And now we go into all this stuff with DNA and vaccine, and then we have this viral plagues and whatever that shit they come up with. And now what do we have? MMR vaccines, or whatever they're called.
Mm-hmm. mRNA.
mRNA vaccines, right?
MMRs are bad too. No.
Yeah. Right, so,
They're all bad.
but that's what we have now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So crazy. I didn't know that
So
about
we,
mustard gas. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so we
wild.
take mustard gas for treating cancer. We take radiation for treating cancer. We take poisons in ACT and stuff treating cancer. And now we're supposed to say what cancer is, mRNA. It's insane. The warfare that we have becomes the war on cancer.
Mm-hmm. It's like they're fighting it. You know what I mean? They're like, it's always got to be this battle, eh? This fight.
Yeah, yeah. It's that fight flight response. And we spend $4 trillion here in the States a year on this nonsense. And the people are sicker than ever. But here we have a thing where it's called DNA. Have you looked at it? How they came about it? The first picture of DNA, they had to radiate that stuff, whatever they had in there, for 62 hours. And then they took a picture in an electron microscope, and you say, that thing that you radiated for 62 hours is what's going on in our body.
Yeah, yeah,
Are you
naturally.
kidding me?
See, that's why it's not science, because you have to observe nature for it to be science. You can't add, be changing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
it's the
now it's
same
all
with
genetic, right?
how they make vaccines is like the excretions of a sickness they call a virus, and they take that stuff and then inject it into you. The
Yeah.
excretions that people's bodies are putting out or animals in a lab,
Yeah.
and that's going to make you feel better.
Yeah. Even
Injecting,
fetal cell lines go in there.
yeah.
And now, when you have a fetal cell line going in, where does it go in a woman's body?
Mm-hmm.
To the
The
reproductive
womb.
organs.
Yeah.
And now you have a response in the reproductive organs from a woman, and all of a sudden they have miscarriages or they can't get pregnant.
That's where all the toxins go too if you're pregnant. Instead of your brain and your organs, it goes into your womb and your reproductive.
Yeah, because the fetal line, that's the body remember. Oh, that's that thing. We put it over here,
Right, exactly.
and it was done on purpose.
Oh yeah, it's like crazy black magic. You're injecting dead
Yeah,
fetal lines, animal organs. It's like some island of Dr. Monroe stuff.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
Literally, they literally took Mengele and made Mengele experiments into healthcare.
hmm But
That's
people
what
are
they did.
so not grounded. They're not attached. So they accept it from these people, right? Because they're not attached to their
Exactly.
family, their mother. They don't trust to
Yeah.
that. It's got to be this expert, just like the priest, right?
And here's Hegel up here. I told you, the master slave.
And how easy it switches too, right? From slave
Yep.
to master.
Yep. All these women out there, they all became petty tyrants when they had the opportunity because they didn't wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
They became the biggest tyrants in the food store.
Oh, totally. This one lady who was like that, she became a teacher and she's like crazy. My friend went into the class the other day because they hadn't moved on, and she's like, "Oh no, we don't allow parents in the school anymore." It's like, no other teacher says that. Just this person, we, and she says we. It's like, no, it's just you, and that's illegal. What are you talking about, lady? She's a tyrant. She's a crazy man, crazy person. It's
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Right?
well,
Now
it's like
you
what
put
they say. Hey, what would you have done in Nazi Germany? Well, you're doing it right now.
you're doing it right now.
You know.
What would you have done with doing the Bolshevik Revolution? You're
Yep.
doing it right
You're
now.
doing it right now. Harassing people at your grocery store.
No different.
Yeah.
Even worse.
Even worse. It's like that
Because the
Milgram's stuff, right?
yeah, because the people that they knew, at least the Russians knew that the Bolsheviks were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now we're here and we see this as normal. Oh yeah,
I don't care if they're listening to me on my phone. I'm not doing anything wrong. As before that would be like a fundamental violation of your privacy.
exactly. Right? The master slave, the tyrant and the victim.
Poor
Right?
Snowden. I always feel bad for him. He risked his life to tell people this stuff and they just don't care. It's wild. Yeah, the master slave. It's so crazy to see it like the grocery store tyrants. You're so right.
Yep,
Yeah. This
they're
lady was
everywhere.
just yelling. But you can't even see their face, so you don't know who they're talking. You just hear sounds, right? You're in a
Yeah,
lineup of 10 people.
yeah.
It's like,
And here's what's coming. You had these babies with this face diapers on, right? But the upper branch of the vagal system gets myelinated by the baby taking cues from faces.
mm-hmm.
That's how it gets myelinated. That's how that nerve starts to function. So it starts with a very close contact with the looking at the mother's face. It's very close.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the face is further away, the baby doesn't even see it. The nervous system hasn't trained that yet. Right? That's why the child should be on the mother constantly, the heartbeat, the nervous system, the touch, right? And then slowly the child will start to walk away from the mother to explore the world. And at age 7, that's when the father comes in. And the father takes the child out into the world. Yeah, but it only happens if from year 1 to 7 that was all set up.
Mm-hmm.
And now all these children that didn't go to school, that were sitting in front of screens, that were with the face masks on, even when they're on family dinners, that vagal nerve never got really myelinated. And now you need safe spaces for everything.
Or they're like
They,
autistic. They don't even smile. Like they don't
they
have
can't.
an expression on their face. It's
Yes,
crazy.
yes, they can't because the nervous system never developed. It's not a drug, it's not a chemical. It's too much information coming in. The nervous system can't deal with it. Now, Stephen Porges, for example, uses sound, special sounds to
Mm-hmm.
bring this back. And he gets people out of being autistic without drugs,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, sound therapy is another good one.
Yeah,
And like frequency therapy and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. Infrared light, you know,
Mm.
that's another one. That's being done right now. That they're looking at this, right? Because again, if you get infrared light into your cell, then the water inside the cell starts to charge.
Mm.
It raises the charge. Right? So go back to cancer. I just found out there was a doctor who got a Nobel Prize for helping people healing from certain diseases by doing what? Sunlight.
Mm.
That's it. He got a Nobel Prize for that, what he found out. Did you hear about it?
No, because the
No.
sun's bad for you and you got to cover your skin with sunscreen,
Yeah.
right? And never go
Yeah,
outside.
because sun causes cancer. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because my wife was always worried. Like, you know what? Just put the babies in the shade. Put a t-shirt on them. It's like you don't need to ever put sunscreen on them. You don't ever need to do that. I'm part Italian, so like we have like a different pigment of our skin. And even like my fair blonde son, he gets a little red, but that's it. Like he doesn't burn. He just turns a bit reddy because he's a fairer skin. My other son, he goes more olive like me.
Yeah.
It's like it's not gonna harm you. I haven't worn sunscreen in like 30 years. I work outside every day in all types of heat, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah. Exactly.
and
Exactly.
you can feel your body charging, you know. I try to even do that every day in the winter. You go outside if you can do it naked and you like absorb and I get re-energized. Like if I have to work a really long day, if I have to go work a night shift, it's like I sit in the sun and I absorb it and it's better than a cup of coffee, you
So
know?
Gerald Pollack, he did all his experiments. He said, what builds charge in the water? Right. So it's like animals, yes. Ultraviolet light, no. Cell phone, no. But sunlight, yes. And fruit juice, yes. All that stuff, right? So he's doing all these experiments. So he gets invited to go up to Sweden or somewhere, Finland or wherever. And he's up at the Arctic Circle, right? But he's there in the summer, so it's like there's never really the daylight is always on, right? But it was interesting. He said when he was done with the lecture, he said, "I just wanted to go to bed. I just flew in. I just wanted to go to bed, right? That's what he wanted." And then the lecture was over, and he said, "Okay, the sauna is ready." And he's like, "What? Yeah, we're all going to the sauna now. That's what we do." So he went to the sauna. He came out of the sauna, and he felt like he didn't have to go to bed. Well, what's interesting is up there in the north, sauna is like the thing. Sauna charges your water, the gel inside your body, right? But what don't you have up there for a very long time? You don't have a lot of sunlight. You have also a
Right.
very high rate of depression and alcoholism. Go to the sauna every day
Mm-hmm.
if you live up there. That's how you recharge the system.
Right.
Now you don't have to do it in Italy. In Italy, you go out in the sun, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland, for example, we had it. We had saunas, and we went all the time, recharging the system,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's also part of trauma therapy, because what trauma does, the constant survival stress that you're living under, right? That constant chemistry, it's lowering the charge. And now you constantly, the organs have to constantly push and push and push till they can't push anymore. And then we call it symptoms, and then we call it
Mm-hmm.
disease.
Yeah, because it's the terrain. It's not the
Precisely, right?
viruses coming from outside,
No,
right?
no, right? So the charge goes up, you become healthier.
Yeah, toxic environment, right? Look at
Yep,
these all the crazy cities.
right. So I basically was lucky because I lived for 16 years in New York City, but I always moved,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, you can go to the park. You can go to, that again, there's less Wi-Fi. Now there's so much Wi-Fi and cell towers, and you
Yeah,
know, even even back in New York, as crazy as it was in those times, there was still like life happening. Right now, it's like the times now is so much crazier than
yeah,
even the bad old days.
yeah. And the other thing was that people still related to each other.
They related. They're in the streets talking.
Yeah, yeah, we were sometimes, I would start talking to someone in the subway or to some guy standing in front of the building. I was like, hey, well, how's it going? Or in some elevator, right? People related to each other. And then anytime we had time, we went to Central Park.
Hmm.
You
Well,
know,
and
we
even that busy schedule of people's lives, right? And, like the country living, it's like, I'm like, oh, 15 minutes for me is like not much time at all. But in the city, it's like you can do so much in 15 minutes. We can get here, we can go, it's like for me, it's like, oh, I
exactly,
like to go to the store where it's like a 5 minute walk from here, not even. But it's like I like to at least have a half an hour. You might run into someone, you're talking to them, it's like,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
because you're not thinking right on the clock. You're not just like watching every second because you got to commute, you got to do this, you got to do that.
yeah,
Oh, my
yeah,
bus comes in 5 minutes. Oh, my thing happens. It's like, oh, even that, the stress of time can really bring you
exactly,
down.
exactly. Right. So we had a dog. We got a dog when we were living in the city, and we had two cats. But it was interesting with the dog. He was sort of, constantly looking around and never lifted his leg
Mm,
in the city. Then we moved outside the city, like an hour north, and all of a sudden we had the birds, and we had the front yard, and then we had a park 2 minutes away. All of a sudden his tail came up, his head came up, he
mm,
started running like crazy, he started lifting his leg. Like, oh, that's the environment he wants to be in.
mm-hmm,
The other environment was too stressful for him. Right? So that was and when we were up in Lake Placid, we had a teaching job up there for a few years. His favorite thing was to sit in the front window and look out over the lake. We were actually living in a boathouse for like 10 weeks or so
mm-hmm,
in the summer. And he would just sit there, look out over the lake. The other thing was just being on the deck, on the boat deck, and just sit there. Well, now we know he charged himself.
mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Just soaking it up.
He was soaking it up, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, even animals know. But the people in cities get animals because there's no nature,
Exactly.
so they have these big dogs and all this stuff to
Yeah,
keep them
yeah, yeah.
attached, right?
Yeah, there's no nature. So the animal becomes that connection, right? It becomes the regulation. The nervous system seeks regulation. It seeks harmony. It wants to be harmonious. And if you give it the right information, what we just talked before, it will do it automatically
Mm-hmm.
because
It'll
we're built that.
self-regulate.
Yeah, we built that way, right? So that's part of my practice is just doing that, and it's not fancy at all.
Mm-hmm. Simple, yeah.
It's very simple, right? It's built into our system,
Yeah,
you
people
know.
did it for thousands and thousands of years, just naturally.
Yeah, my wife, she's less of she likes to have like sort of more like an organized system to follow something. So she'll put on some Chinese guy, some Japanese guy on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and he has like 12-day courses of 12-week courses. He just does it. It's like, okay, I feel like I'm in a class, all right?
Right, right, yeah.
Because it's a girl,
Yeah,
she
exactly.
likes to be in a class.
Yeah, and the direction and
Yeah. And I'm a
the
guy, I'm like,
method.
no, I don't need the class.
That's so funny.
I do it on my own, all right?
Well, this has been a pretty good conversation. I'm just checking the time here. I feel like we've been talking for 3 hours already. This
Oh,
is gonna happen
again,
is this gonna happen every time we get together or what?
yeah, I think so.
That's so funny. I didn't even really notice until just now. Oh my God. Well, it's been pretty great talking to you, Alfred. We're gonna get together on a project here in the future. This was kind of like a
Yeah,
preliminary thing.
yeah,
We just met that one time with Matt and we just started talking and
yeah.
we just hit it off. We might have talked for 2 minutes before we started filming that.
Not even, I said, hi, Luke, how's it
Yeah. Hi,
going?
Luke. Yeah, exactly. And then boom, we just hit it off, and it's like we
Yeah,
have a, I can tell we have a camaraderie. We got that
yeah,
flow.
yeah. Matt knew. Yeah,
Yeah,
Matt
Matt,
knew. It
Matt knew.
was
I
good.
know. It was funny
Yeah,
when he
he
put
was
us
like, I gotta
together.
get these two together.
Yeah. And
And
you're a
he
wealth of,
said to me, so he said to me, you want to do a show with Luke? So is he the guy with Jung? Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Just tell me when.
Yeah, perfect. Well, it's hopefully
Yeah.
it'll get me back into the flow of doing more stuff, putting out more content and yeah, I'd like love to have you back. You're just a wealth of knowledge of all this stuff and we can talk on so many subjects.
Yeah,
Uh
we can go into details a little more, we can
yeah.
like take a subject matter and just explore it,
Yeah, exactly. This was
you
like a
know.
good overview of who
Yeah,
you are and what you're all about and then in the future, yeah, we could tackle a project or something, I think.
yeah, yeah,
I felt the project there. I was like, I know there's something we're gonna do together, me and this guy. We just gotta find out what it is. Trauma of birth, I'll
yeah,
start cracking into
yeah,
it because that might be something we could work together on slides or whatever.
yeah. I was thinking of. I think that Otto Rank's work is so underappreciated, and I think there would be something there
Yeah,
of what you did with the undiscovered self. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot there.
yeah. It's a even yeah. He's got quite a bit of volumes of stuff too. So
Art and the artist. Oh,
yeah,
oi, oi, oi. That's heavy. Yeah.
he did work on mythology too. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
understanding mythology, something. Yeah, he's got a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. He's
Yeah.
pretty good. And I
Yeah.
like the way, they're so sharp. That's the difference with Freud and Fromm and Rank. There's not too much beating around the bush.
No.
It's just like right into it. So that what might make the project a lot easier as well because
Yeah.
it's just a straight shooter,
It
right?
it's heavy.
Yeah.
Here it is. We don't care.
Yeah. It's
Take it or
got
leave it.
it's got to get out there, yeah.
I just, when I did the quote I read you before, I'm walking around the streets now, looking at people like, yeah, rank,
Yeah.
yep, rank,
Yeah.
neurotic, yep, very neurotic. Make yourself the art project.
Well, in the city too, it's like you can hide amongst the other neurotics. When there's less people and there's more balanced people around, it's like it's harder for you to hide your symptoms. And so that's why the cities and big universities and that's such a drive for young people, you know?
Yeah, they're amongst each other in the dysfunction,
Yeah.
and then
Such a
being bombarded with marks.
yeah, exactly.
The biggest loser of them all.
The biggest loser. Oh my God. Listen, it's funny actually if you look at some of his stuff and then you look at what like disgruntled college students are saying now, it's like the same. He was the same. He was like a disgruntled college hippie. It's super weird that it even took off that philosophy at all.
Well, it took off because a lot of people were like him.
Right, exactly.
You go back to regression. It's a regressive philosophy.
Right, and it's in our physiology
Yeah,
and it's in our psychology. Yeah, it's so
yeah.
funny. It was never appealing to me really.
No, no. I looked at him. It's like, what is this? It's like, it's like I don't want to be a victim. I
Hmm.
don't. It's enough being victimized.
Yeah, right,
I don't have to
exactly.
stay there. You know.
Yeah. And you don't want your hand out either. That's another thing, right? Like
No,
it's
no,
like
no,
that
no. I don't want a
you're
handout.
reliant, right? You gotta be
Yeah,
like self-reliance. That's part of, good attachment, all that type of stuff. I see it in my kids, right? Because they're so comfortable with themselves and with our home life, they can go out. They're not afraid to go out and try things and because
yeah.
they know
Because
they can always come back.
there you go. So whatever I experience out there, when I come back home, I can process of what I experienced.
Yeah, they know it's safe. They know they have everything they need.
Yeah.
right? And that's what builds the confidence and self-esteem, obviously, is
Yeah,
they
exactly.
can now go out and actually
Yeah,
build their self-esteem by,
yeah.
trying, trial, error, failure, success.
That's it.
So
That's
yeah,
it.
attachment's a big one.
Yeah, some of the most dysfunctional people that you ever meet are the super wealthy. They're
Hmm.
children.
Oh yeah.
I've read some of their essays. I work with some people that have access to, to, to that group, right? They're the elite,
Hmm.
and I hear some of those stories and I'm like, oh,
Oof. A lot of people that I work for, like as clients, doing different projects or whatever, the super wealthy people, you can see how neurotic they are,
yeah.
you know, especially if they were
Especially,
born that way.
yep, and especially the women.
And women.
They
Well,
have this
and
absolute frightened fear of losing that comfort, that provision that they're having. They'll do anything to keep that.
yeah, they're so sedated on pills. You can see these people's eyes
Yeah,
are going
yeah,
different directions. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like, aren't you, you're not happy, but it's like that form of safety for them, right? That's the safety
yep.
net,
Yes, that's the safety net. That's
you know,
exactly it.
even
That's
though
it.
they're miserable.
That's it.
That's crazy to see.
And those are then the people that go into power structures,
Yeah. Well,
right?
because that's again, it's like the kids going to university or neurotics going into larger groups of people. Like in a small town, everyone knows that person's neurotic. They can't hide. And they also have to deal with it because other people force them to, right? Because you can't
Mm-hmm.
deal, but it's like the psychopaths hide amongst each other too, right? You know, the neurotics hide against each other. That and the power hungry, the people who are power hungry, they all go together too because they know they're going to accept one another. They both have the same drive, right? Or that
Yep.
will to power.
The will to power.
No will to meaning,
No.
which is the real thing, the meaning. The
Yeah.
meaning is what it's all about.
You know, that's why I take Descartes, you know. I think therefore I am. And on my X stuff on my page I said I reversed it.
Yeah.
I am therefore I think.
Yeah. Oh, and that guy was a whole mess himself.
Yeah.
What a freak,
Total
really,
freak,
you know,
you know. But
torturing
look the
animals
influence
and
look the influence that he had. Still does.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, there'll be on your frickin' tea bag, there'll be a quote from him or something, and it's like, what? Yeah,
Instead of
complete.
like, don't be like him.
Yeah, it's kind of like a monster, like I look at all of these people, like, they're pretty monstrous, a
Yeah.
lot of these people, right?
Yeah. And that's why I went back and said, okay, where is that coming from? Right? Freud came up with what he came up with because he was living in an enormously repressed society.
Hmm.
We have no idea. And all this sexual deviance was brewing underneath Viennese society and in the Parisian society and German society because of that repression. Instincts came back in a demonic form. Man, he was sitting in his office and these women came in by the thousands, all talking the same stuff. Now, what is he supposed to come up with?
Yeah, totally.
Well, he was wrong in this and he was wrong in that. Was he?
Hmm.
That was his experience.
Well, it's still there too. A lot of that stuff is still there if you read his work or if you read Dream Story,
Yeah,
Schnitzler. It's what Eyes Wide Shut was based on, Dream Story. It's like there's so much in that.
yeah, it's
It's
multi-generational. Look, you take it, let's take Jung. Okay, so I'll take him. He was born in 1875. He died in 1961. He went through the invention of electricity, basically.
hmm.
He went from the outhouse to have sewage, right? He went through the First World War, the Second World War, and the Cold War. Now take his parents. So his parents probably knew someone that was around during the War of Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents probably knew someone that was born during the French Revolution. So now, when he was in the womb of his mother, what was the experience of the mother? What did he get downloaded with?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then he had, he was, I think he was also sexually abused by a priest.
Mm-hmm.
So what was he supposed to come up with?
Yeah, and his mother was like sort of witchy. What was that stuff called? It was like the
Like
early,
seances,
yeah, it was like the
yeah, they
early
had seances.
spiritualism and all that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, right? So so he's growing up, and now then he worked in an insane asylum,
Mm-hmm.
and he heard their stories. You know, Freud was looking out of Vienna and out of the window in Vienna, and he heard, and there they went up into another war. And before he knew it, there was another war. And guess what? Another war coming.
Mm-hmm.
And he sits there and he's thinking, what the hell's going on? And the only access he had was all these people from Viennese society, especially from the upper echelon, especially from women, because the women turned hysterics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he saw every single day. So what was he was supposed to come up with?
Yeah.
And then
Don't shoot the messenger.
yeah, and then any time he was talking to some guys, probably my mother, my mother, my mother, my mother, my mother, my mother. Why? Because the men were all dead.
Mm-hmm.
They were dying in the war. When they came back, they became tyrannical fathers because they were dealing with all with what they saw in war. They became alcoholics.
Yeah, well, when the father's gone, the son becomes like the stand-in father for the mother and everything else, right? The ear of
Oedipus stands right there, says
Yeah, she
hello.
tells their kid everything, because her husband's not there. And so then now
Exactly.
he's like this, this sounding board for her or whatever.
Yeah, he's the son band, not the husband, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so crazy.
Yeah, and I know people, I know myself how I experienced that.
Hmm.
But that's normal. That's what happens, right? Now, then what do you do with it, right? You can't talk yourself out of it. That was the problem.
Hmm.
And then Wilhelm Reich came along and said, no, 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 no.
Yeah, you got to feel your way out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Get it out.
right. That his, the, what is it, the ego, the super ego and the id,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Ego.
The skin, the muscles, and the organs.
Hmm.
Then you go into atomic physiology and they said, yep, you look at neurotics, what do? They're constantly fudging around on the skin. When it
Hmm.
gets worse, then they start modifying their bodies actually. When it's really bad, then they're going after becoming trans,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
These people were on it, they were right. And then you have clowns coming along and say, well, they were the ones that actually um, made society worse and stuff, and they became the conspiracy, whatever. And I said, no, the leftists took their work
Hmm.
and weaponized it.
Yeah. And cherry picking and all of it.
Yeah. How can you say that these are the people that are responsible when they wrote the books telling you what's going on? If I give you a book to read, am I the conspiracy guy that makes it
Hmm.
happen? No, no, it's not. It's the society didn't get worse because of it. When Edward Bernays came along and he started weaponizing Freud's work and
Hmm.
made advertising out of it, propaganda out of it. Now the weapon starts.
Yeah, and the think tanks and everything.
Yeah, the Frankfurt School, the Tavistock Institute, they all took their work and weaponized it.
Hmm.
That's what cultural Marxism is. It's psychology weaponized. That's what it is. And the
Yeah.
one guy that was a member of the Frankfurt School, Eric Fromm, he wrote about it because he saw what was happening. He was like, I'm not doing this with this shit.
Oh yeah, the Escape from Freedom. You should see my book. I have it's just over there. There's so many little bookmark
Yeah,
thing. The whole thing has like little things
it's
in it.
this thick.
It's
Yeah,
it's so funny. I was like, oh,
yeah,
because I took it off the shelf the other day, and there's just like a million little note things in it sticking out of the top. I was like,
yeah,
holy
yeah,
crap! I probably haven't read it in 10 years, but it was just
yeah.
like too
That would
funny.
be another great project, right?
That
To
would be good
get
too.
yeah to get these books out because
Yeah.
it's not he's known, but he isn't really known.
Yeah, and we don't have to do all of it too, right? There's so much stuff we can take out of there, this core stuff, and bring it out
Yeah,
like
yeah,
like what I did before. So
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
project there. We
There's
got
lots of projects too.
yeah. I'll start cracking the books, and then maybe we'll
Yeah,
work together. We'll work. Maybe we can work even online or something. We'll
yeah,
figure it out. See how it
yeah. We
goes.
can have private Zoom sessions.
Yeah, we can meet up and just hash
Yeah,
out ideas too. That'd be
yeah. And
great.
make some slides and then
Make some slides, exactly. It'll be good. I can
yeah.
see it. I can see it now. Winter 2025. Alfred and Luke. We're doing
Alfred
it.
and Luke.
Yeah.
Project one, part one.
Project one. This is like a session zero here, you know? This is like just hashing it
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
That's so
exactly.
funny. Look at this time. Okay, we better shut her down, buddy.
Yeah, it's more than
Uh,
three
it's,
hours now,
it's
right?
been great talking to you.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone, check out the other stuff we've done. Check out my projects on Unslaved and tech. And I hope you enjoyed this. I'll put all the links below to all of our stuff. Really appreciate it, Alfred. I'll talk to
Yeah.
you soon, all right, buddy?
Thanks for having me, Luke.
Yeah,
Okay. Bye.
anytime.